1 titled Intro to Biology. This is your first lecture in biology class. So this is the first topic, just what is biology. So I answer the question here on this slide. What is biology? Well, bio means life. So bio means life. Ology is the study of. So you put those two prefixes and the suffixes together and you have the study of life. So this is a rather broad science class, but anything that's living is under the domain of biology. So anatomy and physiology, zoology, botany, all that is under the umbrella term of biology. So like I said, it is the study of life. So the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. So life didn't get started on Earth until 3.5 billion years ago. So that means the Earth itself was uninhabitable for about 1 billion years. And the first living things on planet Earth were single-celled organisms. So there's a few themes of biology. So we'll talk a lot about cell structure and what the cells actually do. We'll talk about stability and homeostasis, which is very important, and we will see also reproduction and inheritance. So reproduction, either sexual or asexual, and inheritance. What genes do you pass on to your children? Evolution, a topic that is a little controversial. We'll get into that. Give you some reasons why we believe in evolution, even though it's a theory, but a theory in science, a scientific theory, has a different meaning than the normal use of the word theory. And we'll talk about that later on in this classroom. Interdependence of organisms. Things in the environment don't just live in the environment. They don't live in isolation. So everything out there living depends on something else out there living. So animals always depend on other animals for survival. So plants can't just be out there with plants. You need other animals to pollinate. And you don't always see the interconnectivity of everything in the environment, but everything is connected together. And one last big theme is matter, energy, and organization. Everything in the environment needs energy, and that energy always comes from the sun. So the sun gives us energy, and there's a chain of events that happen thereafter. But we'll go into that when we talk about photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So a bit about cell structure and function, and we'll go in more depth with every one of these topics. But this is just a small overview of these themes. So cell structure and function. Cells are the basic unit of all life. All living things are made of cells. So you're not going to find a living thing with no cells. So if you found what you think is a living thing and it has no cells, then it's not a living thing. So a rock wouldn't have any cells. Your cell phone wouldn't be made of cells. There's two types of organisms. You have unicellular, and that's like bacteria. And those things are basically identical to the parent, because to make another bacteria, the parent just splits in two. So the offspring of that bacteria that was split is identical. Then you have animals and plants and us. We are what's called multicellular. We have more than one cell. Multi means many, and cellular means cells. So more than one cell. And like on the opposite end, una means one, and cellular means cells. So one cell. So that. A little bit on cells. I just talked about this. More than one cell, multicellular. And then you have different cells in your body. You have brain cells, you have lung cells, muscle cells, kidney cells, liver cells. All those are different. All those are different. And cells are small and they are highly organized. So you think a cell is just a cell. Oh, it's just a cell. But what that cell is made of is remarkable. So the reason I said they're so organized is because inside each of these cells are special structures called organelles. Organelles. And that's what carries out all the processes that occur inside the cells. So like I said before, many different kinds of cells exist. You have red blood cells, white blood cells, muscle cells, kidney cells. All of these cells are surrounded by what's called a plasma membrane. That's just the membrane that goes around the cell. Sometimes you'll see in your textbook cell membrane, but a cell membrane and a plasma membrane are the same thing. They're just two different words for the same thing. So tomato, plasma membrane, cell membrane. And all of these cells contain a set of instructions called DNA. So all of these cells, except for your red blood cells, contain DNA. DNA tells the cell what to make, and it tells the body what you're going to look like. It's like your genetic blueprint. Stability and homeostasis. Organisms are very specific. They only operate in a specific range. If the organism goes out of that range, there's some problems. That's why your temperature is an odd number, 98.7 degrees. If it goes too high, you fall in hyperthermia. If it falls too low, you go into hypothermia. Hypo means low, hyper means high. So both of those have bad outcomes. You can't survive too much with a hypothermic condition, and you can't survive a lot with a hyperthermic condition. Also, glucose. A lot of diabetics, well, people in general, need to have a certain range of glucose. Usually 80 to 90 is typically average, their glucose level. And the body maintains it. When you eat, your body reduces insulin from the pancreas to get the insulin or get the glucose number back down. Then it kind of goes back to normal, ideal conditions. People that are diabetic, when they eat, the insulin is not produced quick enough, or it's not produced at a high enough level to bring down the glucose number back down. So it always remains elevated. Just think at your house, if you have the thermostat set on 75, and when it gets up to 80 in your house, it doesn't work to kick on the heat or the air conditioner. So your house is always going to be super hot because it can't work to get itself back down. That's like the diabetic and it's glucose. The glucose goes up and it doesn't have enough power or enough energy or enough insulin to cool it back down. Like if you didn't have the air conditioner, you couldn't, or not a strong enough air conditioner, you couldn't cool it back down. So as I mentioned, temperature is another, water, chemical content, all of those inside the body must be checked, must be in a certain range in order for the body to work properly. produce new organisms like themselves. So everything has to reproduce. So for the species to survive, it has to reproduce and repopulate. So characteristics are passed down from parent to offspring, and that is called inheritance. So, for example, if one particular rabbit is more brown or more black, he'll pass that blackness on to his offspring. That is an example of inheritance. If one rabbit is, say, faster than the other rabbits, that quickness will be passed down to his offspring. So, genetic information in DNA is stored in every cell except for red blood cells. Red blood cells do not have a nucleus, and that's what RBC stands for, red blood cells. DNA stands for, it seems like a complicated word, but it stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. And DNA contains instructions for these traits, and these traits are called genes. So I have brown hair, that is a gene, and that gene is controlled or is written into my DNA. So the reason I have brown hair and then someone else would have blonde hair is because in my DNA, my genes say that I should have a lot of melanin. And melanin is a dark pigment, and it's responsible for dark eye color, dark skin color, and dark hair color. So in my DNA, I have the gene that makes melanin, and that melanin makes my hair and my eyes a darker color. Someone with blonde hair and blue eyes do not have that gene. So they have the gene to make hair and the gene to make their eyeballs, but they don't have the gene to make their hair a darker color. So like I said before, DNA is in every body cell except for your red blood cells. Sexual reproduction, your heredity comes from two different organisms. So you get some genetic information from your mom, from her egg, some from your dad and his sperm. And once those egg and sperm meet, that's called a zygote, and that is a fertilized egg. And like I said, the zygote contains information from both parents. I discussed this a few slides back. Sometimes bacteria go through a process called asexual reproduction, and that's where one bacteria splits itself in two. It cleaves itself in two, so you have two clones of the original bacteria. So if you were to cut yourself in half, you would have two copies of you. And those two resulting cells, those two resulting bacteria, are identical. They have the identical genetic traits as their parent. So again, if you cut yourself in half, both of your two new clones would be identical copies of you. And that genetic information comes from a single parent. So evolution, this is a topic we'll get into further on this year. Like I said earlier, it's a topic that is quite controversial at times, with people not understanding exactly what evolution is and what that actually consists of. But it's just a population of organisms change over time. It's a slow, gradual change over time. A monkey is not going to give birth to a human, but it's just a slow, gradual, grinding process over millions and millions of years. And that's how we have so many species. Eventually, enough of the changes accumulate and you have different species. I'm going to stop it there and pick it up next time. See you guys.